Hey everyone, it's me Gavin Vengeance, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a patch review for version 2.2 of Genshin Impact, Into the Perilous Labyrinth of Fog. Now this patch for me honestly wasn't as bad as a lot of other people tend to see it as. I do feel like it is a little bit more of a lull period for the game, but it did also have a couple of really strong points. So I talked about my feelings with this in my first impressions video, and honestly a lot of those points I made in that video still hold true to my overall feeling for the patch, and I'll briefly go over them now. So I want to talk about the story initially, the addition of Surumi Island, and the characters like meeting Rue and Lady Samita. Really enjoyed that section of the game. It was super nice to see this brand new island and uncover its mysteries, and also see like a lot of references to a few things that I've honestly been wondering about in the game. So the ancient runes there are like really key for me, and I really enjoyed that part. Also the addition of the new enemies to fight and everything, that was really neat. I will say that I'm still not a fan of the corrosion mechanic, but I guess we have to deal with it, so it's there. And then also the addition of the new 4-star character Toma, who unfortunately I didn't get a chance to try out yet, but from everything I hear, he's not really the greatest 4-star that we've got, but I will have to hold my opinion on that until I eventually pull for him, which very well may happen in the next patch on the permanent banner, so we'll have to wait and see for Toma. Outside of that, we had the Hangout Quest, and while I didn't really enjoy them as much this time around, they were a welcome addition. I really do like the Hangout Quest overall. I just kind of wish that we would have gotten maybe a couple of different characters to experience their stories a little bit more and get a little more background information about them. So let's talk about the very first event that we got in 2.2, which was called Tune to the World Sounds. Now this is a return event for a rhythm type minigame, and honestly I really love this minigame. I will say that the difficulty felt a little bit harder this time around, which is very much appreciated for myself as I love rhythm games. Now that being said, the song selection this time around was a lot weaker in my opinion. Very tame, very mellow, and I'm guessing that it's probably because it plays into the instrument that we got, which was the zither. Now again, very much appreciated. I love to see like the duets and everything between the characters, but I just wish that there would have been something a little more upbeat for us to experience. The next event we got was called Labyrinth Warriors. Now this is something that I've been holding all of my thoughts and feelings about until now, so let's talk about it. Now I will start off by saying this is the best piece of content that's been added to Genshin Impact to date, and honestly, I really hope that it returns, because with a couple of minor tweaks, this could be the answer to endgame content. Now, I will start off by saying that the story for it was very enjoyable in my opinion. It was nice to meet a brand new character, Shiki Taisho, and learn a little bit more about his backstory and everything that was going on with his amnesia. Also to bump into a couple familiar faces like Jinyan, Kujosara, and Tartaglia. Really neat story overall, but that's not really the meat and potatoes of this event in my opinion. It's actually the content. So this actually tasks you with setting up two different parties. You have your main party and then a reserve party, and also you can assign yourselves 3 different abilities that you can take along with you in this dungeon. Now this dungeon is very unique because it's randomly generated, much like a roguelike, and also very reminiscent of Palace of the Dead in Final Fantasy XIV for me personally. So it was really familiar in a sense, but also really nice to see how each and every single floor kind of had like its own different charms and buffs and debuffs that you could encounter along your run, and I really enjoyed this thoroughly. I will say that it was like challenging for that final piece of content, the final dungeon, and everything prior to it was really neat to see as well. I do feel like a couple of things that could be changed to make this endgame worthy would be obviously an increase in difficulty, something much more reminiscent of that final dungeon for the entirety of this, and also maybe the addition of like co-op play I think would be fantastic. Also a few other things like maybe weekly restrictions or weekly debuffs or some sort of criteria to change it up and make the content not become stale. But honestly, if we see this event return in some capacity, I really hope that it's permanent, because I have not enjoyed a piece of content for Genshin Impact as much as this. The third event, Shadow of the Ancients, tasks us with taking down a gigantic rune grater, which is seemingly invincible because every single time you reduce its health to 0, it starts to regenerate. Now, with the help of a Sumer researcher, we discover that we can use these things called Persina Spikes to help us in our endeavor. The very first part of this event is called Investigative Surveys, in which we have to place beacons to help try to find parts to repair the Persina spikes. And I will say that while it did have a great idea and everything, it didn't really come off as fun, I guess. I felt it was a little bit lackluster, a bit boring, and I do think that there could have been a couple of more intuitive things done here to make this a little more interesting. The second part, called Data Sampling, it tasked us with charging up the Persina spikes by hitting them with electro attacks, and while we were doing so, enemies would come out and attack the spikes in an effort to destroy them and hinder our progress. Now, this was a little bit more frantic, and I do kind of appreciate that style of gameplay. It wasn't overly challenging in my opinion, but again, it was a little bit of micromanaging required in order to actually make sure you were attacking the spikes to keep them spinning, and I guess it could have been alleviated a little bit in my scenario by using a ranged character like Fischl, because I opted to use a melee electro character. But all in all, I did complete it, and it was very fun. Lastly, the final portion of this event, called Live Testing, tasked us with actually going to the spot we encountered the Rune Grader and picking the appropriate location to set up our Persina spikes, after which we end up going and encountering the Rune Grader itself, and again, you have to repeat things from the data sampling phase, which is just pretty much make sure that the Persina spikes stay charged while also fending off the enemies, and the addition of the Rune Grader itself, which has the ability to focus on one of the Persina spikes and really try to whittle it down. Now, this was a little bit more difficult if we were trying to complete all of the objectives for this fight, because one of them was actually to keep all of the Persina spikes above 50% health, and I will tell you it was a little bit of a pain, especially if you have an account that's not really super geared or anything like that. But all in all, fun. I will say that it was an enjoyable event. Not really sure if I'd like to see it return, maybe again with a couple of tweaks or something else. It would be nice to see. But let's move on to the next event, called Dreams of Bloom, a gardening event in which you turn in random items to Sakia each day, and she will reward you with one of 3 bags of Dream Bloom seeds. Now, each of these bags of seeds can produce different colors of the flowers, and whenever they're fully grown, you can actually send them to friends and request them from friends as well. So it really adds to the beautification of your Serenity pot, which I'm sure a lot of people really appreciate. Myself personally, I'm not really into the whole housing thing, but again, it is really nice to see more customizability, so it's very welcome on that part. Now, that's going to do it for my patch 2.2 review. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, now would be a great time to do so. I will be covering more and more Genshin Impact related content as time goes on, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one. Take care. Peace!